Captain Jake Martinez couldn't stop staring at the screen in front of him. The old emergency signal kept flashing on and off, weak but steady. His research ship Horizon had been floating through empty space for 3 months, looking for signs of ancient human colonies, when they picked up this strange transmission. The signal was incredibly old. Jake could tell, just by looking at the data patterns, that this message had been traveling through space for more than 200 years. It was like finding a message in a bottle that had been floating in the ocean for centuries. Dr. Emily Carter walked over to Jake's station. She was the ship's language expert, someone who specialized in figuring out alien communications and old human codes. Her hands moved quickly over her computer keyboard as she tried to decode the message. "Jake, are you sure this came from humans?" Emily asked, frowning at her screen. "The signal is so old and broken up. Maybe it's just space noise, or something from an alien ship we don't recognize." Tom Bradley looked up from his communication station across the room. He had been working with radio signals and space communications for 15 years. Ever since he graduated from the Space Academy, Tom knew the difference between random space static and real messages. "Trust me, Emily, this is definitely human," Tom said, pointing at his screen. "Look at these patterns here. See how the signal is encrypted? This matches the old codes that Earth's colonial authority used back in the early days of space exploration. This isn't from just any human ship either. According to my records, this signal matches the Aurora." Emily stopped typing and looked at Tom with wide eyes. "The Aurora? Wasn't that one of the big colony ships that disappeared during the second expansion?" Jake felt his heart start beating faster. Everyone who worked in space knew the stories about the second expansion. It was a time about 200 years ago when Earth sent out dozens of huge colony ships to find new planets for humans to live on. These ships carried thousands of families, including many children, to start new lives among the stars. But something went wrong. Many of the colony ships just vanished. They stopped sending messages back to Earth and were never seen again. The Aurora was one of the most famous lost ships because it carried over 10,000 colonists, including 3,000 children. Families had been waiting for news about their relatives for generations. Tom worked on his computer for another hour, trying to clean up the signal and make the message clearer. Finally, he managed to piece together enough of the transmission to understand what it was saying. "I've got it," Tom announced. "The message is broken into pieces, but I can make out the important parts. It says the colony ship is under attack. There are children still alive on the ship, and look at this. They sent coordinates showing exactly where they are." Jake looked at the star map on his screen. The coordinates pointed to a solar system far beyond the edge of known human territory. It was in a part of space where no human ship had traveled in over 100 years. The area was dangerous and mostly unexplored. But what made Jake's blood run cold was the timestamp on the message. The signal had been sent exactly 200 years ago. That meant that people on the Aurora had been in trouble for 2 centuries. Jake tried not to think about what could have happened to those families during all that time. "This changes everything," Jake said quietly. "Tom, I need you to send this message to Earth Command right now. Mark it as Priority 1, the highest emergency level. Include every piece of data we have, every broken fragment of the message, every coordinate, everything." Tom nodded and started preparing the transmission. Within 6 hours, this message would reach Earth's main command centers. And when the leaders of humanity saw this evidence that their people were still out there, still calling for help after 200 years, something would awaken in the human spirit that the galaxy had not seen for a very long time. Jake stared out the window at the stars, knowing that soon, the peaceful exploration ships of humanity would be replaced by something much more dangerous. The galaxy was about to remember why smart alien species never threatened human families. Admiral Susan Hayes walked into the emergency meeting room on Earth. Her face looked tired and serious. She had been in the space military for 30 years, and she had never seen anything like the message from the Aurora. The room was full of important government leaders from all over human space. Everyone was talking quietly, but they all stopped when Susan stepped up to the front. Susan pressed a button, and the broken distress message started playing through the speakers. The voices were faint and full of static, but everyone could hear the fear and desperation. Children were crying in the background. Adults were begging for help. The message kept cutting in and out, but the meaning was clear. Human families were trapped somewhere in deep space, and they had been waiting for rescue for 200 years. 2 centuries, Susan said, her voice barely above a whisper. Our own people have been out there for 2 centuries, and we're just now hearing their cry for help. The room was completely silent. Some of the government officials looked shocked. Others looked angry. A few had tears in their eyes as they thought about families who had been suffering for so long. Senator Mike Thompson shifted in his chair and cleared his throat. He was known for being careful and practical about spending government money on military operations. Admiral Hayes, we need to be realistic here. We don't even know if anyone is still alive after all this time. This could be a waste of resources, or worse, it could be a trap set by our enemies. Susan's eyes flashed with something dangerous. She had lost friends in space battles. She had seen what happened when humans abandoned their own people. Senator, it could be nothing, she said, her voice getting stronger. Or it could be everything. Either way, we're going to find out. We don't leave our people behind. That's what makes us human. The room fell silent again as Susan walked over to her command console. Her fingers moved over the controls, and suddenly every communication system in human space came alive with an emergency signal. I'm invoking Protocol 7, she announced. The blood call. Every human ship, military or civilian, in the outer territories is ordered to stop what they're doing and converge on staging area Bravo 7. We're bringing everyone home. Protocol 7 was something that hadn't been used in over 50 years. It was an ancient emergency code that meant every human in space had to help, no matter what they were doing. It didn't matter if they were soldiers, traders, miners, or explorers. When the blood call went out, every human answered. The response was immediate and incredible. Within hours, messages started pouring in from all over human space. Captain Lisa Rodriguez was carrying cargo worth 1 million credits to a trading station 3 weeks away. When she heard the blood call, she didn't hesitate. She turned her merchant ship around and headed for the meeting point, leaving behind the biggest business deal of her career. Retired Admiral Robert Chen was living quietly on a peaceful colony world, tending his garden and enjoying his retirement. His old warship had been sitting in a storage facility for 10 years. When the blood call reached him, Robert dusted off his uniform and brought his ship out of retirement. The old weapon systems still worked perfectly. Danny Walsh was running a mining operation in the asteroid belt with 50 ships and 300 workers. They were in the middle of extracting valuable metals from space rocks. When the emergency signal reached them, Danny ordered his entire fleet to stop mining and head for the rally point. His industrial ships weren't built for fighting, but they were tough and could carry supplies, all across human territory. The same thing was happening. Families packed up their belongings and joined the growing fleet. Retired soldiers came out of retirement. Scientists abandoned their research projects. Even civilian passenger ships volunteered to help with the rescue mission. The alien species who shared the galaxy with humans watched all of this with growing worry. They had always thought of humans as peaceful traders and explorers. Sure, humans could fight when they needed to, but they usually preferred to solve problems through talking and negotiation. But this was different. This wasn't humans preparing for a normal military operation. This was something deeper and more frightening. The aliens were seeing humanity's most basic instinct, the absolute refusal to abandon family. The Galactic Confederation's ambassador, sent an urgent message to Admiral Hayes. The message warned that assembling such a massive fleet violated 3 separate peace treaties. It could be seen as preparation for an invasion. Admiral Hayes' response was broadcast on every communication channel in the galaxy. Her words were simple and direct. Tell them to bill us later. Within 2 weeks, the largest fleet in galactic history was gathering at the staging area. Ships that had never been designed for war were being equipped with weapons. Peaceful exploration vessels were being converted into rescue ships. And at the center of it all, humanity was remembering something that the galaxy had forgotten. When you threaten a human's family, you don't get to negotiate. You get to face the consequences. The massive human fleet came out of hyperspace at the edge of the distant solar system. Thousands of ships appeared all at once, from tiny scout vessels to enormous battleships. Captain Rodriguez sat in her command chair aboard her converted cargo ship, staring at the main screen in complete shock. "Dear God," she whispered, her voice barely audible. What they saw in front of them was like something from a nightmare. The colony ship Aurora was still there after 200 years, but it looked nothing like the proud vessel that had left Earth centuries ago. The ship was twisted and scarred, with strange growths covering parts of its hull. It looked more like a dying animal than a spaceship. But that wasn't the worst part. Surrounding the Aurora were dozens of alien ships unlike anything humans had ever seen before. These vessels weren't made of metal and plastic like human ships. Instead, they seemed to be alive, pulsing with a sickly green and purple light that made everyone who looked at them feel sick to their stomach. Lieutenant Amy Foster was working at the scanning station on Admiral Hayes' flagship. She had been trained to read life signs and identify different types of beings from long distances. Her job was to figure out who was alive and who wasn't on ships they encountered. "Admiral, I'm getting confirmed contact with survivors," Amy reported, but her voice was shaking. "I can detect human life signs aboard the colony ship, but—" She stopped talking and stared at her screen with a confused and frightened expression. "What is it, Lieutenant?" Admiral Hayes asked. "Ma'am, the readings are wrong somehow. I can tell these are humans, but there's something different about them. The biological patterns don't match what I would expect from normal human colonists. It's like they've been changed in some way." Admiral Hayes felt a cold chill run down her spine. She had been fighting in space for most of her adult life, and she had seen a lot of terrible things, but she had never encountered anything that could change humans into something else. She looked at the tactical display on her command screen. The computer had identified the alien ships based on old military records. They belonged to a species called the Depors. These creatures had been attacking and kidnapping people from the outer edges of the galaxy for thousands of years. Most civilized species tried to stay far away from devourer territory, because no one who was captured by them was ever seen again. The devourers weren't interested in conquering planets or stealing resources like most alien enemies. They were interested in living beings, especially intelligent ones. Rumors said they used their prisoners for experiments, trying to understand how different species worked and how they could be improved or changed. Commander Paul Davis was monitoring all incoming communications when his equipment suddenly came alive with a weak transmission. "Admiral Hayes, we're receiving a message from the Aurora. It's coming through on an emergency channel. Put it through the main speakers," Hayes ordered. What came through the ship's communication system made everyone on the bridge freeze with horror. It was the voice of a child, probably no more than 10 or 12 years old. The voice was thin and terrified, barely above a whisper. "Please," the child's voice said through the static. "They're coming back. They take people, and they don't. They don't come back the same. My mom. She looks like Mom, but she's not Mom anymore. Please help us." The transmission cut off, leaving the bridge in complete silence. Admiral Hayes closed her eyes for a moment and took a deep breath. When she opened them again, her expression had changed completely. Her officers had never seen her look so angry and determined at the same time. Several crew members actually took a step back from her. "General Quarters," Admiral Hayes announced, her voice carrying throughout the entire fleet. "All ships, battle stations, load all weapons, and prepare for immediate combat operations." She paused for a moment, then continued speaking on the fleet-wide communication channel so that every human ship could hear her words. "Today, we remind the galaxy why humanity doesn't negotiate with kidnappers," she said. "These creatures have had our people for 2 centuries. They've been experimenting on our families, changing them, hurting them. That ends now." The largest military fleet in human history began moving toward the alien ships. Every captain understood that this wasn't going to be a normal space battle with rules and mercy for defeated enemies. This was something much more personal and much more final. For the first time in 2,000 years, the Devourers were about to learn what happened when they made the mistake of taking human children. They were about to discover that some species in the galaxy didn't fight for territory or resources or political power. Some species fought for something much more dangerous. They fought for family, and when humans fight for family, they don't stop until every threat is completely eliminated. The battle was about to begin, and the galaxy would never be the same. What happened next would be talked about and studied by military experts across the galaxy for hundreds of years, but they wouldn't study it as an example of smart battle tactics or brilliant strategy. Instead, they would study it as proof of what humans become when they completely stop holding back. Captain Brian Walker was commanding the assault carrier Retribution, one of the largest ships in the human fleet. From his bridge, he watched as the first group of Devourer ships tried to escape, carrying human prisoners with them. These alien vessels were moving fast, trying to get away before the human fleet could stop them. Brian's response was immediate and shocking. "All engines to ramming speed," he ordered his crew. "Target their engines. We're going to stop them from taking our people." His navigator, Lieutenant Kelly Martinez, turned around in her chair with wide eyes. "Sir, if we hit them at that speed, the collision will destroy our ship too. We won't survive the impact." Captain Walker looked at his crew with calm determination. "Then we die, saving our people," he said simply. "That's what humans do. That's what families do for each other." The Retribution accelerated to incredible speed and smashed directly into the alien mothership. The collision was so violent that both ships disappeared in an explosion brighter than a small star. The blast lit up the entire battlefield for several seconds. But even as Captain Walker and his crew were dying, other human ships were already moving in to rescue the prisoners. Captain Diana Foster had brought her rescue ships right through the dangerous debris field, ignoring the deadly radiation that could kill her crew in minutes. Her only concern was getting to the human captives before they could be taken away. All across the battlefield, human commanders were making decisions that broke every rule of civilized warfare that had been agreed upon by the galactic community. These weren't the actions of a military trying to win a normal battle. This was something much more frightening. Commander Joe Patterson was leading a group of destroyers when he made a decision that would shock alien observers. He authorized the use of biological weapons that had been specifically designed to target Devourer genetic patterns. These weapons had been banned by every civilized species in the galaxy because they were considered too horrible to use, even in war. But Joe didn't hesitate. "Deploy the gene targeting systems," he ordered. "Every Devourer ship in this sector needs to be eliminated. No survivors, no escapes." On the other side of the battle, Colonel Anna Brooks was commanding a heavy cruiser that was surrounded by enemy ships. Instead of trying to fight her way out or retreat to safety, she made a decision that her crew knew meant certain death. "Arm the antimatter charges," she told her weapons officer. "We're detonating them at point-blank range." Her crew understood what this meant. Antimatter explosions at close distance would vaporize their own ship along with the enemy vessels. But they also understood why their colonel was giving this order. There were human children on nearby Devourer ships, and this was the only way to stop the aliens from escaping with them. "It's been an honor serving with you all," Colonel Brooks said to her crew as they prepared for the final explosion. From safe distances, far away from the battle, alien observers were recording everything that was happening. Ships from dozens of different species were watching the human fleet with growing horror and confusion. They had never seen anything like this before. These alien military experts had studied thousands of space battles throughout galactic history. They understood tactics, strategy, and the normal reasons why species went to war. But what they were watching didn't make sense according to everything they knew about warfare. The Altarian war analyst was one of the most respected military observers in the galaxy. He had been recording battles and analyzing combat strategies for over 30 years. As he watched the human fleet systematically destroy every Devourer ship, he sent an urgent message to his government. "This isn't a normal military engagement," he transmitted back to his home world. "The humans aren't trying to win territory or capture resources or force a surrender. They're not even trying to win in any traditional sense." He paused as he watched another human ship sacrifice itself to destroy an escaping alien vessel. "They're trying to ensure this never happens to any human, anywhere, ever again. They're willing to trade ship for ship, life for life, until every single Devourer in this system is dead. This isn't warfare. This is extermination carried out by a species that has convinced itself that mercy is something they can't afford." Other alien observers were sending similar reports to their governments. The humans weren't following any of the normal rules of space combat. They weren't trying to minimize their own losses or preserve their ships for future battles. Instead, they were treating every engagement as if it was the most important fight in the history of their species. And perhaps it was, because for the first time in 2 centuries, the galaxy was seeing what humans looked like when they stopped pretending to be civilized and started acting like a species that would do absolutely anything to protect their families. 3 weeks after the battle began, the last Devourer base went completely silent. The alien species that had been kidnapping and terrorizing people at the edge of the galaxy for thousands of years was gone forever. They weren't just defeated in battle or forced to surrender. They had been completely wiped out of existence. Every ship, every base, every single member of their species had been systematically hunted down and eliminated by the human fleet. The survivors from the Aurora were finally safe and heading home. Captain Jake Martinez, the man who had first discovered their distress signal, stood in the medical bay of his ship watching the rescued colonists. Dr. Emily Carter was working tirelessly with her medical team to help these people who had suffered for so long. Many of the survivors were children, but not the same children who had originally been aboard the colony ship 2 centuries ago. These were the descendants of those original families. They were kids who had been born in captivity, raised in fear and darkness, never knowing that somewhere among the stars, their own people had been searching for them. Some of these children had never seen natural sunlight or breathed clean air. They had spent their entire lives inside the damaged colony ship, surrounded by the constant threat of their alien captors. They spoke in whispers and jumped at sudden noises. Many of them had never seen a human adult who wasn't scared or broken by years of imprisonment. Admiral Susan Hayes walked into the medical bay and stood beside Captain Martinez. Her uniform was wrinkled, and she looked exhausted. She had been commanding the rescue operation for weeks without rest, making sure every single survivor was found and brought to safety. "Jake, how many ships did we lose in the battle?" "Admiral," Hayes asked quietly. Captain Martinez looked down at his tablet computer, reviewing the final casualty reports. 47 ships completely destroyed. 8,000 crew members killed in action, he said, his voice heavy with sadness. "But you know what? Every single one of those crews knew it might be a one-way mission when they volunteered. They came anyway. Admiral Hayes nodded slowly. She understood the weight of those numbers. 8,000 families back on Earth, and the colonies would be mourning their loved ones. 8,000 people had given their lives to save strangers they had never met, simply because those strangers were human. As they watched, a young boy who couldn't have been more than 7 years old took his first shaky steps through the medical bay. This child was the great-grandson of one of the original colonists who had left Earth 200 years ago. He had been born on the damaged colony ship and had never walked freely on a human vessel before. The boy moved slowly toward one of the large windows that showed the stars outside. His eyes were wide with wonder as he looked at space without, seeing it through the broken and dirty windows of his prison ship. For the first time in his life, he was seeing the universe as a free human being. When the boy smiled, it lit up his entire face. That simple expression of joy and wonder made every sacrifice worthwhile. Admiral Hayes felt tears in her eyes as she watched him discover what it meant to be safe. "That's what we do, Jake," Admiral Hayes said softly. "That's what makes us human. We don't abandon family. We don't leave our people behind. No matter how long it takes, no matter what it costs, we bring them home." The news of the human rescue mission spread throughout the galaxy, faster than any previous story in galactic history. Every alien species received the message loud and clear. Even though humans never officially sent any kind of warning or threat, humanity's peaceful behavior in normal times wasn't because they were weak or afraid of fighting. It was a choice they made. But when someone threatened their families or hurt their children, humans would travel across the entire galaxy to find the people responsible. They would sacrifice everything they had to protect their own people, the predatory species that lived at the edges of civilized space. Learned to study their star charts very carefully after that. They began giving human colonies and human trade routes a wide, respectful distance. They realized that some targets weren't worth attacking because the response would be far more terrible than anything they could gain. Word spread through the criminal networks and pirate gangs that operated in the outer territories. The message was simple: don't touch human ships, don't threaten human colonies, and definitely don't take human prisoners. The species that had ruled through fear for thousands of years now understood what it felt like to be afraid. In the deep computer archives of the Terran Federation back on Earth, Protocol 7 remained permanently active. The blood call could be activated again at any time if another human distress signal was discovered. The galaxy now knew that humanity would always answer when their people called for help, and in the quiet moments late at night, when the rescued children from the Aurora looked up at the stars from their new homes, they knew they were part of something larger than themselves. They were part of a species that would cross the void of space itself to bring them home. That knowledge would stay with them forever, and someday they would pass it on to their own children and grandchildren. Retriclod can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.